Bonjour. Bonjour, je suis accompagné de Patrick Rochon, notre candidat dans le comté de Mont-Saint-Bruno-L'Acadie, et à ma droite, Daniel Brisson, qui est l'organisateur en chef du Parti pour le Québec, notre lieutenant du Québec. I will make my declaration first in French and after in English. Le plus important défi économique auquel le Canada fait face ces jours-ci est celui du conflit commercial avec les États-Unis. La première tâche de nos dirigeants politiques est de trouver un terrain d'entente avec l'administration Trump pour sauver ce qui peut l'être du libre-échange nord-américain. Avant même d'avoir parlé à M. Trump, M. Carney a dit hier que nous avons atteint un point de non-retour, que la vieille relation que nous avions avec les États-Unis est terminée. C'est peut-être vrai, mais nous verrons. Rien n'est encore coulé dans le béton. Quoi que l'on pense des décisions du président Trump et de sa stratégie, cette relation est trop importante pour le Canada pour que nous la laissions se détériorer complètement sans avoir tout fait pour la remettre sur les rails. C'est pourquoi j'ai dit qu'il fallait éviter d'imposer des tarifs de représailles qui ne font qu'ajouter de nouvelles taxes aux Canadiens eux-mêmes. Et aussi, ces tarifs de représailles n'auront pas d'impact majeur sur l'économie américaine. Parce que l'économie américaine est 12 fois plus grosse que la nôtre et dépend beaucoup moins du commerce avec nous que nous dépendons d'eux. Nous nous tirons tout simplement dans le pied avec ces tarifs. Nous ne pouvons pas gagner une guerre commerciale avec les États-Unis. C'est pourquoi, je le répète, et ça depuis plusieurs semaines, qu'il faut mettre sur la table tout pour s'assurer d'avoir une renégociation immédiate de l'accord de libre-échange. Et mettre tout sur la table, ça veut dire aussi la gestion de l'offre dans le domaine du lait, du poulet et de la volaille, un des principaux points de désaccord soulevés par le président Trump lui-même et son secrétaire au commerce. Comme vous pouvez le voir, je suis aujourd'hui devant le siège social de l'UPA, l'Union des producteurs agricoles du Québec, à St-Hyacinthe. L'UPA a déjà été décrite comme un État dans l'État à cause de son pouvoir et de son influence énorme. C'est l'une des organisations syndicales qui défend la gestion de l'offre. La gestion de l'offre est un système coûteux et inefficace qui fixe le prix que paient les Canadiens et c'est un prix en moyenne qui est 2 fois plus élevé qu'il ne le devrait. C'est aussi un système qui empêche les producteurs d'innover et d'exporter parce que notre marché est fermé aux importations. On ne peut pas sacrifier le reste de l'économie québécoise et canadienne pour sauver ce mauvais système qui profite à un groupe de pression influent que nous aurions dû abolir il y a bien longtemps. Pierre Poilievre a dit cette semaine qu'il allait protéger le système de la gestion de l'offre et que le Canada a réussi à signer plusieurs ententes de libre-échange avec d'autres pays, tout en protégeant le système de la gestion de l'offre. Eh bien, c'est faux. L'une des ententes les plus importantes que nous aurions pu signer avec le Royaume-Uni, un de nos plus gros partenaires commerciaux avec l'Europe, a échoué l'an dernier à cause de la gestion de l'offre. Et même si nous avons réussi à signer des accords de libre-échange et un accord de libre-échange avec le président Trump en 2018, bien cette fois, il est évident que la situation a complètement changé. La prochaine négociation sera bien sûr différente. Poilievre, tout comme Carney, sera incapable de signer une entente, sera incapable d'avoir un deal avec le président Trump s'il ne met pas la gestion de l'offre sur la table. Les politiciens de l'establishment mentent aux producteurs en leur faisant croire qu'ils pourront toujours protéger ce système. Et ils mentent aussi aux Canadiens en leur faisant croire que la gestion de l'offre est bonne pour eux alors qu'elle les appauvrit et qu'elle a un impact aussi négatif sur d'autres secteurs de notre économie en empêchant la conclusion de meilleurs accords de libre-échange. Il est temps de faire de vraies réformes. Il est temps d'abolir la gestion de l'offre dans l'intérêt des consommateurs, dans l'intérêt des producteurs laitiers et de l'ensemble de l'économie canadienne. The most important economic challenge facing Canada these days is the trade dispute with the U.S. Our leaders' first task is to find common ground with the Trump administration to save what can be saved from the North American Free Trade Agreement. Even before talking to Mr. Trump, Carney said yesterday that we have reached a point of no return, that the old relationship with the U.S. is over. It may be true. We will see in the near future, but nothing has been set in a stone. Regardless of what we think of President Trump's decisions and strategy, this relationship is too important for Canada to let it deteriorate completely without doing everything we can do to get it back on track. That is why I said we should avoid imposing retaliatory tariffs, which only add new taxes to Canadians themselves, but will not have a major impact on the American economy. The U.S. economy is 12 times larger than ours and depends much less on trade with us, which we depend on. We shoot ourselves in the foot with tariffs. We cannot win a trade war with the U.S. That is why I have been saying for weeks now that we need to put everything on the table and immediately renegotiate the free trade agreement. And put everything on the table also means supply management in the areas of milk, poultry, and eggs, one of the main points of this agreement raised by President Trump and his trade secretary. As you can see, I'm in front of the head office of the UPA, the Quebec Union of Agricultural Producers, here in St-Hyacinthe. The UPA has been described as a state within a state because of its power and influence. Supply management is costly and inefficient system, setting prices and charging Canadians twice as much as they should for dairy products. It is also a system that prevents producers from innovating and exporting because our market is closed to imports. We cannot sacrifice the rest of the Canadian economy to save this bad system that benefits a small, influential lobby group. It should have been abolished long time ago. Pierre Poilievre confirmed again this week that he was going to protect the supply management system and that Canada has successfully signed several free trade agreements with other countries while protecting that system. This is just not true. One of the most important agreements we could have signed with the UK failed last year because of supply management. And even though we managed to sign an agreement with Trump in 2018, this time it's obvious that the situation has completely changed. The next negotiation will be very different. Polyev, like Carney, will be unable to sign a deal with President Trump if he does not put supply management on the table. The politicians of this country, the establishment politicians, lie to the producers, Canadians, and by telling them that they can always be able to protect that system. And they are lying to Canadians by telling them that supply management is very good for them, when on the contrary, it makes them poorer. And it negatively impacts other sectors of our economy by preventing better free trade agreements. It is time for real reforms. It is time to abolish the supply management system in the interest of consumers, dairy producers, and the entire Canadian economy. Thank you.
Do we have any questions on the Zoom?
We will take questions now.
Des questions? Levez la main. Raise your hand if you have any questions.
Avez-vous une question?
On a une question ici. On a une question sur le Zoom.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Bernier. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, sir. How are you today? This is Spencer with MCPA. I just wanted to read off to you Donald Trump's tweet and get a little bit more of insight from you on it. I just finished speaking with Prime Minister Mark Carney of Canada. It was an extremely productive call. We agreed on many things, and we're meeting immediately after Canada's upcoming election to work on elements of politics, business, and all other factors that will end up being great for both the United States of America and Canada. So in that, it seems to me that he's already kind of calling the election for Carney and also doubling down on his support publicly for the Liberals. If you could comment on that further, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have anything to comment on that. For us and for Canadians, the most important is to have a deal with President Trump as soon as possible. And like I said in my declaration, to be able to have a deal, we need to put supply management on the table. And if, Carney or Polyev don't put that on the table, the facts are there. We won't be able to have a good deal for the entire Canadian economy.
If I may follow up, though, you don't see any concerns with Trump supporting the Liberals? That's not something that comes across your mind?
That's what you think, First, I'm with Canadians, and this party is running to be sure that Canadians will have better deals and a better country. And we are proposing bold reforms to be sure that, we are putting this country first. So what President Trump thinks about Carney or Polyev, I don't have any point of view about that. I'm doing my job as a leader of a political party to be sure to have the best policies for the future of this country.
I appreciate your answer, sir. Thank you.
We have another question here on the Zoom. We have another question.
Hi, Mr. Bernier. This is Jen Hodson from the Western Standard. So I'm interested to hear because we've heard some concerns from the other side of the supply management agreement that are in support of it, suggesting that maybe this agreement, if it were to be abolished, then milk and dairy products, for example, from Wisconsin, would come into the Canadian markets, flood it, and Canadians could buy the American dairy for much cheaper than what they would for the Canadian dairy. So how would you respond to concerns like that? And maybe you could put it in the perspective of the free market.
Yeah, when that system will be abolished, dairy producers and poultry and eggs producers will be able to export their products. But actually, we will need a transition period for maybe a couple of years. And also, we will need to buy back these quota. And I'm telling them, we will be able to do that. And by having, a good price for your quotas. That's why we need to start to sit with them and having a negotiation. So they will be able to export, but also U.S. dairy products will be able also to come to our market, and Canadians consumers will be able to choose what they want. Actually, I know that some dairy producers in the U.S. are giving hormones to their cows. It is illegal here in Canada, and if they want to export their milk, their products, they will have to do like our dairy producers. So it will be fair for everybody.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. And a follow-up, we're
Thank
the
you.
only federal party leader that is talking about having common ground with President Trump and actually sitting down and negotiating with him rather than putting on retaliatory tariffs. And you've also been touring in the US, going on various American podcasts, and we'd like to know if you've actually had any communication with anyone in the Trump administration that is willing to talk from your point of view, as no other federal leaders are seemingly willing to go down there to discuss this issue.
No, I don't have any communication with anybody in the Trump administration, but everybody must knows that our position on supply management and having a deal and putting everything on the table and having a deal immediately as soon as possible is the best for our country. And if President Trump wants to impose tariffs on American consumers and businesses, that is his choice. But for me, I said that in the beginning, I'm against a trade war. I'm against the 25% tariffs that Polyev and Carney decided to impose on the Canadians. For me, we must not do that. Canadian consumers are paying that, and we still have a huge inflation in our country. We don't need prices to go up more. So our position is clear, and maybe somebody in the Trump administration knows our position, but we are not in contact with them. I'm doing politics in Canada for Canadians first.
Okay, understood. Thank you. And if possible, I'd like to ask you one more thing that wasn't covered in this press conference. I'm interested to know what your stance is on medical assistance in dying, the Liberals' legislation. The Conservatives are, pushing for certain barriers around it. The Liberals want to open it up, and it's been pushed back for a couple of years. But where does the PPC stand on this?
Yeah, up to now, it's too easy for Canadians, and we are promoting assisted suicide, and I'm not for that. Actually, by doing that, when you have also our health care system that is not efficient, it's like sending a very bad message to Canadians, telling them that maybe we can try to save you, but if we cannot, we will kill you. I don't like that. And actually right now, it's some nurses and doctors are proposing that to Canadians. It must come from Canadians first. And when a doctor is doing that, that must be illegal. They are promoting assisted suicide, and I really don't like that. In the beginning, it was supposed to come from the person at the end of life, and that's not the case anymore. And in Quebec here, Quebec is the capital of assisted suicide in the world, and I'm not proud of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Bernier.
Thank you.
We have another question, and une autre question.
Hi, Mr. Bernier, Spencer here again. Just to preface my question here, and it is not related to policy. Every time you speak, it is clear to anyone who's actually listening that you're speaking from the heart and that you're honest. And so I want to ask you a question because I know it's not you who controls your Twitter profile, but the only criticism that is founded that I can find online about you, which I get frequently, especially when I post videos of yourself, is that your Twitter blocks people. And I know that's kind of trite and really, frankly, kind of stupid, but I will say it is important for people who want to support you that when there is criticism online, that they don't get blocked. And if you could address that, I think it would be very much appreciated from people who are on the fence for voting for it.
I approve everything that is on my Twitter account, and I'm responsible of everything that is on my Twitter account and all my social media. That being said, there's a lot of trolls and people who are, throwing names at me. I don't like that. I want to have a frank discussion with people online. And if they're not able to have arguments, and that's, that's me in politics. I'm fighting for ideas with good arguments. And, I want my opponents and people who are not in agreement with me to do the same on social media. But when they are insulting me, I don't have time for that. Thank you.
No, absolutely, and nor should you. But I would just say, not that you should take my recommendation for anything, but I would say the blocking of these people, I would just let them scream into the void because no one actually pays attention to them, and anyone who's paying attention to you knows who you are. So that's all for that, sir. Thank you again for what you do for Canada.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nous n'avons pas d'autres questions. Il n'y a pas d'autres questions. No other questions.
OK. Thank you, everybody. Merci tout le monde. Bonne journée. Bye-bye.